The sky over Tuscaloosa, Alabama hung low that afternoon, thick, gray, and undecided, like it couldn't make up its mind whether to rain or not. The air carried that uneasy mix of fried catfish grease and gasoline, the kind of smell that stuck to your clothes and stayed there. The parking lot of Marley's Diner was half full, mud-splattered trucks lined up beside a row of spotless motorcycles that gleamed faintly under the hesitant light. Inside the diner, the radio hummed low, a faint country tune barely rising above the clatter of plates and the chatter of regulars. But outside, near the entrance beneath a flickering neon sign, stood 6 men. The Iron Hounds. Leather vests, loud engines, and reputations that made most people cross the street when they saw them coming. They weren't bad men, just men life had hardened. Men who'd seen enough loss to stop caring about what others thought. At the center of the group stood Reed Lawson. He was in his early 40s, tall, broad, and steady, with gray threading through his beard and a thin scar cutting across his left eyebrow. A scar people never asked about, because the look in his eyes told them not to. Reed was in the middle of telling a story about a highway breakdown, the kind of tale that had his crew laughing in bursts, when something unusual caught his attention. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement, small, hesitant, fragile. A little girl, no older than 10, walked across the gravel lot. She moved slowly, almost like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. Her shoes were scuffed, her pink shirt faded to the color of old cotton candy, and her braids looked like they hadn't seen a comb in a few days. Beside her, she pushed a scratched-up bicycle with one handlebar wrapped in tape. The laughter died. One by one, the bikers went quiet, until even Reed stopped talking. He watched her approach, small, uncertain, holding on to the handlebars like they were her last piece of safety. When she stopped just a few feet away, she looked up at Reed with eyes too big and too tired for someone her age. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper. "Excuse me, sir, would you buy my bike?" Reed frowned, confused. "Buy your bike? What for, sweetheart? You look like you still need it." The girl looked down at the gravel, her small hands tightening on the bars. "Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." The words landed like a punch. Even the engines in the distance seemed to fall silent. Reed blinked slowly, his expression changing. He crouched down so his eyes met hers. "What's your name, kid?" Alya," she said quietly. "Alya Brooks." "Well, Alya," Reed said softly, "where's your mama now?" "She's at home," the girl replied. "She told me not to leave, but I wanted to help." One of the bikers, a tall man covered in tattoos named Duke, rubbed the back of his neck. "Man, this ain't right," he muttered. Reed stood slowly, looking her over. The dirt on her knees, the loose laces on her sneakers, the hollowness in her eyes. Something about the kid, it got to him. He'd seen hardened men fall apart over less. He turned to his crew. "Y'all got cash on you?" A few nodded. One pulled out a wrinkled 20, another dug through his vest pocket. Reed reached for his wallet, but then stopped. Something in his gut told him this wasn't just about buying a bike. He closed his wallet slowly. "Hold up," he said. "Buying that bike's not the point. If this kid's telling the truth, something's wrong at home. Real wrong." Alya bit her lip, looking up at him again. "Mommy says we'll be okay, but she lies when her tummy growls. I can hear it." Reed's throat tightened. He didn't even know this girl, but for some reason, she felt like someone he was supposed to help. Like fate had put her right there in front of him on purpose. He crouched down again. "Alya, can you take us to your mama?" She hesitated, eyes darting between their bikes and their tattoos. You won't be mad at her?" Reed shook his head. "No, ma'am. We just want to make sure she's okay." She studied him for a moment, trying to read his face. Then, after a long breath, she nodded. "Okay, but it's kinda far. I can show you." Reed stood and turned to his men. Mount up. We're going for a little ride. The men exchanged glances, curiosity, concern, and a hint of unease, but not one of them argued. They trusted Reed's instincts. Always had. Alia climbed on her small pink bike, gripping the handlebars tight. The iron hounds fired up their engines one by one, the thunder rolling across the lot, and formed up behind her. It was a sight nobody in Tuscaloosa would forget, a small girl on a pink bicycle leading 6 roaring motorcycles through the cracked streets of town. The engines growled low as they rolled past old storefronts and peeling murals, past the church with the faded white cross. Locals turned their heads, whispering, pointing, because you didn't see bikers escorting little girls every day. Duke pulled up beside Reed at a red light. "Man, you sure about this?" he shouted over the rumble. Reed didn't look over. "Ain't sure about anything." "But you heard her, didn't you?" Duke sighed, shaking his head. "Yeah. I did. Kid's tougher than most grown folks I know." Up ahead, Alia looked back once just to make sure they were still there. When she saw them behind her, she smiled, small, tired, but real. And somehow, that smile hit Reed harder than anything else. They crossed a bridge over muddy river water and turned down quieter streets, where lawns were brown and porches sagged under years of neglect. Finally, Alia turned down a narrow gravel path behind an old grocery store. She pointed. "It's over there." At the end of the path stood a rundown apartment complex, paint peeling, windows boarded up, mailboxes hanging open like broken teeth. Reed cut his engine. "You live here, kid?" She nodded, setting her bike down gently. "Second floor. But we don't got power no more. Mama says it's okay though. Candles smell nice." That sentence broke something in him. The men followed quietly as Alia led the way up the creaking wooden stairs. Every step groaned under their weight. When they reached the door, Alia knocked softly. "Mama?" "It's me." No answer. She tried again, voice smaller this time. "Mama, I brought people." From inside came a weak voice, barely audible. "Alia, baby, who did you bring?" The door cracked open an inch. A woman stood there, thin and pale, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her clothes hanging off her frame like she'd borrowed them from someone bigger. Her eyes were bloodshot, and when she saw the men behind her daughter, she stiffened. Reed removed his sunglasses and softened his tone. "Ma'am. We don't mean no trouble. Your daughter came up to us at the diner, said you hadn't eaten." The woman blinked, embarrassed. She shouldn't have done that. I told her not to worry." Her voice cracked on the last word. Alia squeezed her mother's hand. "Mama, they wanted to help." For a moment, the woman, Danielle Brooks, said nothing. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, "We're fine." But Reed looked past her into the apartment, and saw the truth. The dim light revealed empty shelves, an overturned cereal box, a few candles melted to nubs on the counter, and a stack of unpaid bills held down by a cracked mug. Duke stepped inside, shaking his head. "This ain't fine, ma'am. Not even close." Danielle turned away, ashamed. "I just lost my job. Things'll get better." Reed noticed the eviction notice pinned to the wall. "When's rent due?" Danielle's voice was small. "Last week." Reed's eyes narrowed. "Who's your landlord?" She hesitated, clearly afraid to say the name. When she finally whispered it, the air in the room shifted. Reed froze. "Say that again." She said it louder this time. "Terry Vance." The men exchanged looks, every one of them recognizing the name. Reed's jaw clenched. "You mean to tell me he's the one who did this?" Danielle nodded, her voice shaking. "He took everything. Said I was behind on payments, but I had proof I wasn't. He wouldn't listen." Alia added softly, He yelled at her. He said we'd never live here again. The silence that followed was heavy. Reed turned toward the door. Get the bikes ready. Reed, Duke said cautiously, what are you? We're gonna have a talk with an old friend, Reed said, his voice low. But that man's about to learn what happens when you take from people who've got nothing left. The roar of engines split the quiet Alabama evening like thunder rolling down an empty road. Reed Lawson and the Iron Hounds rode in a tight formation, dust kicking up behind them as they left the apartment complex. Alya stood on the balcony with her mother, watching them disappear down the road, not knowing that those men were about to change everything. Reed didn't speak for miles. His jaw was locked, eyes burning beneath the weight of memory. He knew the name Terry Vance too well. Years ago, they'd been on opposite sides of a long and bitter dispute, one that ended with Reed walking away from the construction business he'd built with his bare hands. Terry had undercut him, spread lies, and stolen contracts until Reed's company collapsed. Reed had taken the loss quietly, deciding he'd rather start over than become like the man who betrayed him. But now, Terry wasn't just cheating men out of work. He was taking homes from women and children. That crossed a line. When they finally pulled up outside Vance Realty and Property Management, the building was dark except for a light in the corner office. Reed cut the engine and motioned for the others to stay put. Y'all hang back, he said. This one's personal. Duke frowned. Reed, you sure? You goin' in there alone? Reed glanced at him. I ain't goin' in there to fight. I'm goin' in there to make him look me in the eye when he lies. He pushed open the door. The bell above it jingled softly, a strange, cheerful sound for such an ugly place. Behind a wide mahogany desk sat Terry Vance, thick-necked, gray-haired, dressed like success itself, crisp shirt, gold cufflinks, and a grin that had conned half the county into signing their savings away. He looked up, irritated at first, then smirked. Well, I'll be damned. Reed Lawson. Didn't think I'd see you again outside a bar fight. Reed didn't smile. I came to talk about a tenant of yours. Danielle Brooks. Terry leaned back, feigning confusion. You'll have to be more specific. I manage a lot of properties. Reed's eyes didn't waver. Second floor unit on Magnolia Street. You evicted her last week. Terry shrugged. Business is business, Reed. If she didn't pay. She paid, Reed cut in, his tone sharp. You know she did. You took her home anyway. For a second, Terry's grin slipped, just slightly, before he chuckled again. You always were sentimental. Look, the world's rough. People fall behind. Not my fault. Reed stepped closer. A little girl came to me today, your tenant's daughter. Tried to sell her bike so her mama could eat. You sleep fine knowing that? Terry's expression hardened. You don't get it, Lawson. That's not my problem. I don't run a charity. Reed nodded slowly. No, you run something worse. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. I used to think you were just greedy. Now I see you're rotten clear through. Terry leaned forward, voice dripping with arrogance. And what are you gonna do about it, biker boy? Beat me up? Go ahead, give me a reason to call the cops. Reed turned his head slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. You still think the law protects you? You've been taking from the wrong people, Terry. And you're about to find out who's been watching. Without another word, Reed walked out, the bell chiming again behind him. Outside, Duke and the others were waiting. Well? Duke asked. Reed pulled on his gloves. He's still the same snake. But I know what to do. He swung his leg over the bike. We're gonna make this right. Not just for them, for everyone he's done this to. The plan. That night, the Iron Hounds gathered at Reed's auto shop on the edge of town. The place smelled like oil and steel, and the walls were covered in framed photos of rides long past, moments of brotherhood that outlasted time. Reed stood over the workbench, a stack of papers in front of him, copies of eviction notices, bank records, and property filings he'd quietly been collecting for months. "Turns out Terry's been running a scam," he said. "Overcharging low-income tenants, falsifying late fees, then flipping the properties for cash. He's been doing it so long, nobody even questions him anymore." Duke cursed under his breath. "Man's a parasite." Reed nodded. "Yeah. But parasites die quick when the light hits them." They spent hours mapping out the next steps. They'd use what connections they had, lawyers, old friends in real estate, local journalists, to expose everything. But Reed also had something else in mind. Something more immediate. The next morning, they returned to the apartment complex, this time not just with bikes, but with boxes of groceries, bottled water, and a repair crew from Reed's own shop. Danielle stood on the balcony, her eyes wide as she watched them unload. What are you doing?" Reed smiled. "Fixing what that man broke." Alia came running down the stairs, barefoot and grinning. "You came back." Reed knelt down, handing her a small bag. "Got something for you, too. Hope you like strawberry jam." She hugged the bag like it was treasure. "Thank you." Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to." "Yes, ma'am," Reed said softly. "We do." While Duke and the others patched the broken window and replaced the flickering lights, Reed sat with Danielle and listened. She told him about the fake fees, about how Terry had forged notices, and about the other tenants who'd been pushed out under similar lies. By the time she finished, Reed had made up his mind. He wasn't just going to expose Terry. He was going to make him answer publicly. The reckoning. 2 weeks later, the Tuscaloosa Community Hall was packed. What started as a small tenants meeting had grown into a local movement, fueled by whispers, online posts, and quiet determination. Reed stood near the back with Duke, watching as families filled the seats. Danielle sat up front, holding Alia's hand. When Terry Vance finally walked in, confident and smiling, he froze at the sight of cameras. Local reporters. Activists. Even a city council member. "Evenin', folks," Terry said, adjusting his tie. "I hear there's been some misunderstandings about my properties." Reed stepped forward from the shadows. "A misunderstanding's when someone forgets a word, Terry. This here's theft." All eyes turned as Reed laid a stack of documents on the table, proof of falsified ledgers, altered contracts, and fraudulent payments. The crowd began murmuring. Terry's face paled. "Where'd you get those?" Reed's voice was calm. "Doesn't matter. What matters is the people you hurt. The kids who went hungry while you cashed their rent checks." Danielle stood up then, her voice shaking, but strong. "You took everything from us, Mr. Vance. But you didn't take our dignity. Not anymore." The room erupted, applause, shouts of agreement. One by one, other tenants stood, telling their stories. The local news cameras rolled as Terry Vance, sweating and cornered, tried to defend himself. By the end of that week, the city froze his assets, and an investigation was underway. But for Reed, justice wasn't about headlines. It was about what came next. Full circle. A few weeks later, Reed pulled into the same diner where it all began. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose. On the curb sat Alia, her bike freshly painted, the chrome handlebars shining. She waved when she saw him. "Mr. Reed." He grinned, parking beside her. "How's that bike treatin' you, kiddo?" "It's fast now," she said proudly. "Mommy got a new job, too. She says it's all 'cause of you." Reed smiled, shaking his head. "Nah. It's 'cause of her. She didn't give up." Alia tilted her head. "You didn't either." Reed chuckled softly, looking out toward the road. Guess not. As the rest of the iron hounds rolled in, the familiar thunder echoing through town, Reed thought about how small moments could change everything. One hungry child. One broken bike. One choice to care. The waitress came out to greet them, smiling. The usual, boys. Reed nodded. Yeah. But bring an extra plate this time. For our guest. Alia laughed, her eyes bright again. And as the engines cooled under the Alabama dusk, Reed looked up at the fading light and thought, sometimes the hardest roads lead you right where you're supposed to be.